Hello and welcome to a Gadsby's England special, an unexpected show today following the death of Diego Armando Maradona. We felt that this was just too big of a story not to cover. We're going to hear live on Facebook, and I believe I'm live on Instagram with you too. So, you know, how exciting is that? Maybe not too exciting for you, but we shall see. And I'm delighted to say we're going to be joined by Nick Goldman, the Goldster, who's somebody who truly is somebody who can speak about Maradona with great authority. He went through Mexico '86. Of course, I was only 2 at the time. I don't know how I remember it so well. But that memorable match, one of the most infamous and famous in the history of football, not just English football, but I think around the world, it's regarded as one of the great football matches of all time. The worst and the best of Maradona in one go. So we're going to do that, but give you a quick review of the man. Astonishing figure in football. Of course, he came obviously from you know the very bottom of the hill of life, if you like, and made it to become arguably the greatest player of all time. And we all know, you know, what he achieved. The debate will go on and on, how he compares, you know, with the players of today. You know, I'm very much one who believes that Pele and Maradona are out on their own. When the Goldster comes on now, he will also have, you know, very much his own view, and people all over the world, of course, have that view. But that will ramble on and on, won't it? Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to bring the Goldster on because he knows much more about Maradona than I do. No, I think we both have our, you know, Maradona stories and histories, but let's bring him on, shall we? All right. Hello, Mr. Goldman. How are you?
How are you, Gadsby?
I'm fine, but what a historic day. And I mean, you were just saying to me something interesting, which was you don't know whether. Sorry, I've lost you for a moment there. All right. Sorry. Get you back up. The joys of. There we go. The joys of live broadcasting. Have you uploaded this new Apple, this new Big Sur from Apple? It's an absolute nightmare. This is why we're coming on late tonight. But anyway, Diego Maradona, Nick. What are your first thoughts on his passing?
A lot of sorrow, a lot of upset, to be honest.
Really?
Kind of shocked, yeah. We all knew it was inevitable. Obviously, his health has been awful for a number of years, and obviously he was admitted to hospital, I think, 10 days ago or so, and came out. So it was a complete shock, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, I don't know whether it's really kind of a weird feeling, because obviously you just go back to that day in '86 of that epic game, and it's you know, as much as he was, you know, an unbelievable player, we also can't forget of what he did to us as an England fan. And you know, me and you, we've done many England games together and gone through a lot of World Cups, and obviously we weren't old enough to be at that World Cup, but we both watched it, and it was kind of a very strange, obviously you know, ruined our kind of day for everybody in England.
Yeah, ruined more than our day.
Yeah, but I just think, I don't know, I think it's what's funny is that everybody's come out and given incredible tributes about him, and obviously he was a well-liked guy, even though he was kind of he was like a likable rogue, wasn't he? He was that kind of a character.
Yeah.
But what an unbelievable footballer. You know, for me, the greatest ever, because I wasn't old enough to see Pele play properly, apart from obviously towards the end of his career. But yeah, it's a surreal feeling today. I felt kind of upset about it, and it's like, I don't know. It's very weird. It's very weird feeling that he's unfortunately passed away today. I think it's, you know, if he wouldn't have been such a great player and so world famous like he was, and what he had achieved in the game, where, like you say, what you were summing up earlier on, where he come from, I don't think it would have the same impact with certain other players. But with this guy, he was just a mammoth of a man, wasn't he? As a footballer and as a character as well.
An absolute sort of towering figure for 5'5" as he was. And just to say very quickly, we're now on Instagram Live as well, and I am here talking with Nick Goldman, the Goldster. I'm not sure if his picture is coming through, but if not, you have the dulcet tones of this Yorkshire voice, which unmistakable and incomparable, right?
Well, what did you expect, an Argentinian voice?
You could probably do one, man. The impressions you do are amazing.
I'm not going to do it at this time of night.
I mean, he beat so many odds, didn't he, to come from literally the slums. We're not just saying, he came rags to riches, but he came from crime-ridden, dirty slums in Buenos Aires, and but had such a talent. I can't remember what scout it was who saw him when he was 9 or 10 and just said he's going to be the greatest player ever. Sort of people around him laughed. How can you tell so early? And he said, I can tell you, I've seen him. I've seen the way he handles the ball. So to speak. I've seen the way that he is on the ball. There's just no question about it. And he just as you say, regarded as just a cat in the background here. Look, this is the problems of live broadcasting. Okay, hopefully he will behave. Just his stature and his low sense of gravity at the time when we, England, were ignoring players who were smaller and who weren't big in the air and who weren't able to head and all this. And what we may have missed, by not looking at players like that, but they were on it. They were much more in tune with skills at the feet, rather than us who wanted to get a big man up there, didn't we? And just kind of go for muscle and power and strength, which we saw how that went for many years. What do you think his club career, Nick? I mean, you know quite a bit about that. I mean, obviously he went from Boca to Barcelona. It was kind of worship.
He started off at Argentina's juniors, and I think he scored something like 160 goals in 120 games for them. From the ages I think it was 16 to 18 or 16 to 19, and then he went to Boca Juniors for a year. Then he transferred to Barcelona. So I remember I was reading an article actually earlier on about Menotti, who was obviously the Argentinian manager of the World Cup of '78. Now Maradona he made the squad, but he didn't actually play in '78. I think he made the squad. Was he just left out of the squad? But I know he was upset not to play in that World Cup, and Menotti turned around and said to him, you will be the next number 10 in this Argentina team, and he was. So everybody knew what an unbelievable player he was at 16, 17, 18. His goal record, like I say, for juniors in Argentina was unbelievable. Went on to Boca for a year, which is his team supported as a kid. That's kind of, that was his passion to play for that team. And then he got this unbelievable move. I think it was a transfer record at the time. I think it was something like 5 million. I think it was like £5 million it was to Barcelona. Didn't quite do it for Barcelona. I mean, don't get me wrong, scored some great goals, some memorable occasions for him there, but very short-lived career at Barcelona. And then got this, but hasten to say, he did have a very bad injury at Barcelona, and it was an injury which they thought that he may never actually seriously play again. It was a very, very bad injury he got, because something which obviously me and you have spoken about is how when comparing these players of your Maradonas and your Pelés to the likes of your Ronaldos and your Zidanes and your Messis, they got hacked to death on these pitches, and that's what happened to him at Barcelona. He got hacked and he got a very, very bad injury, and he didn't play as many games as he should have played. They eventually, obviously sold him to Napoli. But again, I think it was a record. I think it was a record fee of $6 million at the time, or round about that figure. And then he obviously went on with Napoli to single-handedly, win them the Scudetto. He won them the Italian Cup. He won them the UEFA Cup. And a team which was not great. It wasn't a great Napoli team. I think they had Careca, who was obviously another big name there. But apart from that, wasn't a massive. You couldn't. I think somebody mentioned it earlier on. One of the football pundits, I think it was Jamie Carragher, actually said it. You couldn't really name any of the other Napoli team or the Argentina team of the World Cup. Me and you could, but most people couldn't. And it just sums it up that he was literally a one-man team for Napoli and Argentina, with an unbelievable goal record for Napoli and for Argentina. So yeah, I mean, his club career from then onwards was absolutely superb. And a guy who was being kicked to death every week on the pitch and playing on some awful pitches at the time. Awful pitches. I mean, the pitch in Mexico in '86 against England wasn't a good pitch. It was an awful pitch. And he still seems to get away with it. I mean, the guy he was just blessed. He was just blessed with a God-given talent, and he made the most of it. And it was just, you can argue who is the best. It's impossible. Nobody can answer it. Nobody in the world can answer who's been the greatest ever. For me, because it was my era, and I watched him. I thought he was the best. What I've seen. Obviously, comparing him now to people like Messi and Ronaldo, who are, don't get me wrong, are absolutely brilliant and the two world's best players. But I just think for Maradona, and I'm sure you'll agree with me because you have the same take on me when it comes to international football. If you can do it at the top at international level and win a World Cup or European Championships, then you've really done it. You've cemented yourself. And that's what he did. And he did it single-handedly.
Yeah.
He took Argentina to a World Cup final twice. He won one. All right, he didn't win the other. But his career was going downhill a little bit in 1990. But he did it. And, Messi hasn't done it. Ronaldo hasn't done it at that level. So for me, that's the reason why I think he was. Obviously, me and you were discussing earlier on about Pelé, and there wasn't that much footage of his earlier, of the, couple of the early World Cups he played in. But I'm sure he was probably definitely on par with.
Well, I think the point you make about, if for those of you who engage in this argument, the Messi, Ronaldo versus Maradona, Pelé, I'm going to, pull the gloves off here and say, I think it's ridiculous. I think there's absolutely no question. And I think if you want no better example than that, listen to what Nick has said here, which is that take a look at photographs of Maradona and indeed Pelé's thighs and knees and legs as a whole, how they looked when they came off the pitch. I mean, they were bubbling. They were just hacked. I mean, they were in agony by the last few minutes of the game. They had been kicked and hacked, and every dirty trick that defenders would try because they knew the Maradona was just so deadly and so dangerous. They tried everything, and in those days they weren't punished for it. That is the key difference. Now, to tell me that Messi and Ronaldo would have survived in that background because they would have had to develop an extra skill, which Maradona had and Pelé had, that they done, which is to be able to withstand pain like that and be able to take that much more physical side of it. So if you extrapolate that and take that violent physical side out of it and put today's football in there with the strict rules about tackling, I mean, football is much more non-contact right now, and you give Maradona that extra bit of space, because that's what you get now, because defenders can't tackle the same way they did before and get away with it. I don't understand how there's any argument. He would, with that talent that he had, he would have even more space. He would have that extra moment. He would have that extra. The defenders would be more hesitant. They couldn't do what they do to Messi. So they couldn't do what old defenders could do. They would have to play off him like they do with Messi. I mean, Messi can score goals because he does have that extra bit of space. He can't be hacked and he can't be tackled the way that Maradona and indeed Pele was in those days. So I just want you to imagine, those of you who argue that that Messi and Ronaldo are better, to imagine Maradona without the injury side of things coming into today's game. And I just don't think there's any contest. I think as good as you've seen Messi, and he does do things which are phenomenal, I get it. He also has the dribbling skills. He also has the free kick skills. But imagine that, but with even more sort of strength and more sort of character behind it, and more. I think Maradona's balance was better. His point of gravity was slightly better as well. And I think he would not go down as easily as Messi goes down. And Messi is not a cheat at all. In fact, Maradona was a cheat, but Messi is very much a strong, sturdy player. I'm not saying that, but I still think that Maradona's strength would probably get him in areas where there was very tight spaces. I think he would be more. He would succeed more than Messi does. I think there are ways of bringing Messi down or stopping Messi that would have been much more difficult with Maradona. I think he was so strong as well. I think physically he had that edge over Messi, and I think this is hard to say. When Messi has been stifled at international levels, and yes, he was Argentina's probably their most influential player in 2014. I don't want to say he's the best player because I think Di Maria, a lot of people said, was probably Argentina's best player in 2014. But he imposed himself more on the games. But he still didn't bring to the tournament what Maradona brought to 2 tournaments. And I think that is about strength of character. And I think there's something to do with physical strength in that as well. Zidane also had that, had huge physical strength. Messi is almost more like he glides and he's beautiful to watch, but I don't think he has the gravitas that those players had, and that's why I think Maradona in today's game would be as high as we think Ronaldo and Messi are, and believe me, they are absolute demigods. I think you would have a god if you had Maradona in today's game. And I'm English, and you're English, and we take no pleasure in saying that after what he did to us. But Nick is right, and I thoroughly agree with that. And I think that I get kind of annoyed because to me and Nick, it's kind of obvious that you can counter that argument that Messi and Ronaldo are better on every level without a adequate response to contradict it. Look, we're going to be right back in a few moments with myself and the Gold Star, and stand by. And no sound, please, my friend, no sound. And we are back. Let's get the big man back. Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? Come on, the show is nothing without him. We know that. Nothing without him. And there he is. There he is. That's all we want to see, isn't it? Stand by, Nick. Just a couple of technical things here. We have this new background screen that's really cool. Doesn't quite work yet, but we'll figure that out. We must inevitably, Nick, go to. There's only one match that we have to focus on. This is Gadsby's England, after all. We've been England fans for life. How do I begin to talk about this match? I mean, what are your memories of it? Where does it? How clear is it to you today? That day, do you remember that day? And what are your impressions of that game now, 34 years on?
I do. I seem to remember, obviously, that game and the Belgium game, obviously with Platt's goal. I seem to remember those two games for some reason more than any other game. Sorry, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, those two games, obviously different World Cups, but those two games seem to stick out. Don't ask me why.
The Italia 90 game where we scored in the last 16, yeah.
Yeah, and the quarter-final, the Argentina game in '86. For some reason, those two games stick out. And obviously, I was, very young at the time with in '86, but I remember obviously watching it and crying my eyes out, which I'm sure you did. Obviously, when we were knocked out.
The bookies paid. The bookies paid people who had bet on a draw. The bookies paid up.
Did they really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that, actually. I didn't know that. But yeah, it was obviously a mad game at the time. I mean, I don't remember too much about it because obviously I was only young. But yeah, I mean, I remember afterwards, obviously feeling down for days about it, and then for some stupid reason, I actually wanted Argentina to go and win that World Cup against Germany, only because it was Germany in the final.
Yeah,
and
right.
I hated Germany more than I hated Argentina. It was kind of bizarre, but it was a surreal game, wasn't it? Which nobody could believe at the time. And you just watch the reruns of it. I'm just watching the reruns of the goal before, and how we still don't know how that. I think he was a Tunisian referee at the time. Just gave that decision. I mean, every England player ran up to him, and it was clear. It was absolutely clear. It wasn't even debatable. It wouldn't even go to VAR now.
No, I mean, it was so. What I remember, the reaction was not so much. Yeah, of course. Number one, how did the referee miss it? Of course. But number two, how could he do such a thing? We just weren't used to that in England. We were like, wait a minute. You don't. Why would you even think about doing that? Why would you even put your hand in the air? Because it's not, I think, unfair to say English players would not have done that then. Now, who knows? They'll try anything, but it's not something that somebody like Gary Lineker probably would have even thought about. It was so impudent, and he called himself a bandit. Maradona. He said, "I'm a bandit," and that's exactly what it was. It was like being mugged. Nobody could believe that somebody would have the sort of, what do you want to call, audacity or the kind of crookedness in the game to even think about, I'm going to try and punch here. And that, I think, is what infuriated.
Well, I think he said, didn't he, a couple of times in interviews, in recent interviews, years later, he said it was it was kind of a, although he wasn't, against, he liked England, he wasn't against England. People have made out to be completely anti. He wasn't, but he did say with a cheeky smile on his face, and it was revenge for the Falklands, wasn't it?
He did say that,
and he said he did put a smile on his face, which I'm sure if it was the other way around, you could understand it. But he wasn't anti.
No, he wasn't.
He actually wasn't.
And he made good friends with Gary Lineker, and I think
I think Reedy knew him quite well.
Yeah,
there was quite a few of them who were he had a lot of respect for him. If he was such a rascal, which Bobby Robson called him, of course, a little rascal, I guess he was. But if there was more to it than that, then he wouldn't have got the respect and the tribute he's been getting from all these players who are friends with him.
And of course, the other thing that people forget was it was, of course, a very politically charged time with the Falklands War. But also, Argentina had had a grudge since 1966, since Rattan got sent off in that famous game in the quarter-final when England played Argentina, when Alf Ramsey, next day, the headline was "Animals." Alf Ramsey had called them animals, and they'd never forgotten that. They'd never forgotten that, and it was they were filthy. Let's not forget that. They were absolutely. Say that again.
Were you at that game?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, some Argentina have always, had that grudge following that game. So a lot of
Yeah.
people of the generation before, that was what they were interested in, getting one over on the English with, not so much even the Falklands. Because I think, not to forget as well, that a lot of people in Argentina were very much against that Belgrano government, as I think it was in '82. It was a dictatorship. It was a horrific dictatorship, and I think that maybe the English put overemphasis on the Falklands side of it. I think there were a lot of millions of Argentinians at the time who were oppressed and lived under horrible conditions of that dictatorship, so military dictatorship. So, but I think there was a lot of reasons. I think, you always say everybody wants to beat England for a start. We are the so-called founders of the game or whatever, and there was that. But I think, and then of course he came up with that. I mean, it was a brilliant phrase. I mean, again, it infuriated us so much, but it is the most iconic phrase, isn't it? I mean, it's up there with any sporting phrase ever, up there with a Ali phrase, up there with anything, and it's the hand of God, and it's become part of the lexicon now. But as much as it infuriated us, how brilliant a term to come up with that. The arrogance of the guy to say, yeah, I did handball it, but it doesn't matter because it was the hand of God. It's amazing we haven't even forgiven him.
It was a double blow to us, wasn't it? The arrogance afterwards. And, I think that's why Bobby Robson was so upset, wasn't it? Obviously, but he just couldn't. There was no respect from him from Maradona at the time. He never said he would never admit that he cheated. No. He would never admit it. It was a cunning trick, or it was. I can't remember what he said in Spanish, but he would never admit it, and that's what
infuriated us.
Yeah, infuriated people like Bobby Robson and future generations.
He did, and the even more was that. We'll talk about the second goal in a second, but he always said he preferred the first goal. He scores the greatest goal ever scored, and then he's the only. He said that, but the first one was much more special to me, and that says what he was a cheat. Let's not beat around the bush here. He was a cheat. He just happened to be the greatest. To be the greatest cheat, greatest player who was a cheat. But he actually said he was more proud of the first goal than the second one. You can leave that his position on the match at that. But let's move on to that. That second goal, greatest goal ever scored for me.
Probably yes.
Because of the level of the game. And because of the quality of the opposition, England, England were a world-class team back then. They had started badly, but we had let, one goal in until that point in the tournament. So we were one of the best defences in the world at the moment. So, you might say, just kids always say, I saw this goal, They might look better goals than that one, but you have to,
context of it.
The context, exactly, of what we were, a World Cup quarter-final.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on. What you were going to say? Yes.
No, I would agree with you. It was, we've seen some unbelievable goals over the years. I mean, phenomenal goals from great players in different tournaments, whether it's Champions League, World Cups, European Championships, whatever. But this was, the greatest stage of them all, the World Cup finals.
In the Aztec.
In the very hot conditions, a terrible pitch. Wasn't a good pitch. You ask any of those players, it was not a good pitch. And he just, inside his own half, what he did was just, it literally was, it was the feet of God, wasn't it?
Yeah, really. It was the feet of God. Brilliantly said. Yeah.
I mean, that's what it was. Nobody could get near him. And it probably was the greatest goal of all time, considering like you say, the surroundings of what it was. And then I think he went on to score. He scored some unbelievable goals in that tournament.
he went past players like Peter Reid and Terry Butcher, and I think Kenny Sampson. I mean, we're talking about top quality players who would have a lot of forward players in their pocket.
Well, we just couldn't get the ball off him.
No.
I mean, Graham Souness was saying in a quote earlier on I was reading that he played him because he was playing in Italy at the time when Maradona was in Italy, and he used to play against him, and he just said, even me, and he obviously Souness was a great player and he was as hard as nails, and he'd go in, and he said you just couldn't get the ball off him. He just bounced back off you. It just seemed to be glued to his feet, and there's not many players who have got. I mean, obviously Messi's got that, and it seems these little guys seem to have it. And Maradona certainly had it, and you just couldn't get the ball off him.
No.
And that day it just went for him, didn't it? In every way, it went for him. But let's not forget that it wasn't just that one game. He single-handedly in that entire tournament.
He was brilliant.
I think it was you said to me, and it's so true. He dragged Argentina into that final and dragged them to win that World Cup. He did the same thing in 1990. He dragged them to the final. He just didn't quite have enough for them to win it. But he dragged them to 2 World Cup finals. And for me, you really can't beat that. But
no.
Sorry to digress and going away from that goal, but it was phenomenal. But let's not forget what else he did in those other games.
Yeah,
against Belgium, he was magnificent.
People forget the goals that I think, did he score both goals against Belgium? But he scored like a mini version of the goal against England, and a lot of people forget that goal. It was another phenomenal dribbling goal where he just cut a defence to pieces. And you're right, this wasn't. Now we see really great one-off performances at World Cups. I mean, there are some consistently good ones. I think Mbappe was great at the last World Cup, and Modric was brilliant. But to see him perform not just a good level, but almost like a godlike level, game after game after game, and the people forget that game against Belgium where he'd almost gone up again a level. He could have beaten them on his own. He was amazing. And then a good friend of mine from Germany, a friend Takin, was telling me earlier, we were having a chat about earlier, is that for him the greatest moment that Germany remembers. If you remember the final, I'm sure you do, Argentina went 2-0 up in the first 20 minutes, but Germany, being Germany, dragged themselves back into it. Rummenigge came in, I think, scored 2 goals to make it 2-2.
Yeah. And
Germany thought, well, we're in the ascendancy now, let's go out and win it. But who was it? There was a pass that Maradona slipped to, I think it was to Burashaga. And Sakin said that pass for him is the greatest single pass he's ever seen, because it was just impossible to see the angle. It was impossible to see that it was on. It was just the timing of it, the weight of it. Anybody could have scored from that pass. It was just he did something as great in many ways as the goals. He just saw a line that nobody else could have seen at a moment when his team was under total pressure, having gone. Imagine it going 2-0 up and then being pegged back to 2-2, but yet you have this play, and that's what I mean about gravitas. That's what I mean about winners, people who can just produce it, and that's what Ronaldo and Messi haven't been able to do for their countries. I know they have for their clubs, but they haven't been able to do it at the most pressurised, highest level. But that pass, any of you, by the way, as well as watching the goal against England, tried to miss the hand of God one, Belgium, watch that single pass that won the World Cup. It won the World Cup, that pass. I'm sure you remember it.
Yeah.
So just in every department, he was great. We're going to come right back. I definitely want to talk about the later years and what happened after '86, because again, it was full of ups and downs. But we will be back with you shortly. And we are back. Let's just bring the great man back. There we go. Let's just move. Live computer screen there. Gotta love them. So we've got a Mac Big Sur has decided to start popping stuff up now, like scanning for clutter or something. Apple. Okay, we're back. So Nick, let's just sort of do the final part of this now, and anything this you can think of. I would also, since it's just come to mind, recommend that film. I can't remember the name. Fantastic director who makes documentaries. He made the one about Ayrton Senna. He made the one about Diego Maradona as well. Have you seen that documentary?
There was a couple of them. I actually saw one last year in 2019 at the Cannes Film Festival. There was the premiere I went to. I was fortunate to get a ticket for the premiere of the Maradona documentary, which was, I think, a 2.5-hour documentary. Probably the best documentary I think I've ever seen on a sportsman. It was absolutely phenomenal. Everybody should see it.
Is that the one that's called Diego Maradona, or is that?
I think it's just called Maradona.
I think that's the one. Yeah.
It's the most recent one. It's a feature-length documentary, and the footage they have in there is just incredible of him. A lot of the great footage when he was in Napoli and behind the scenes stuff. I don't know how they've got the footage for this, but it's absolutely incredible footage. What they got access to. And it's one of the best, like I say, one of the best documentaries I've seen. Everybody should see it. I mean, it's just incredible. Some stuff which you'd never see. Obviously there's a lot of stuff on YouTube, like a lot of showing a lot of his goals and things like that. But there's some of the stuff in this documentary I'd never seen before. So yeah, it was a real eye opener.
He obviously after '86, he became, he was already a superstar in many parts of the world, of course, and worshipped in Naples. But obviously he became, beyond, he became a legend, iconic after '86. And then, of course, there was the controversy that came with it. He was on and off the pitch. He could be a real bully. He had his problem then, of course, later on with drugs. But let's bring us up to 1990, which was another phenomenal World Cup, and one that England, of course, we were so close to getting another crack at Argentina in that final, weren't we? Which is another what might have been for us. But I'm reminded more than anything of that tournament of when Argentina played Italy in the semi-final in Naples, how the crowd was almost more rooting for Argentina because the Neapolitans worshipped him that much that they were willing to put any team that he was in above their own national team. That is how much he was utterly worshipped in Naples. And it was a famous game which Italy were expected to win. Argentina played probably their best game. Maradona was phenomenal in that game. He'd been not so good in the tournament. They'd scraped through. They'd lost the first game to Cameroon. And then somehow in the last 16, against all the odds again, they beat Brazil. And they started to gain momentum. And then in that semi-final, they seemed to come of age. And then sadly spoiled it all in the final by appalling behaviour. And he, of course, got sent off in that game, didn't he? But that semi-final in Naples was some game, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And I think what's interesting, just going back a step, 86 to 87 obviously was a World Cup, obviously which he won. But he also won the title with Napoli in 86. I think 86 to 87. That was the first title he won with Napoli. And then in 1990 to 91, I think it was in the next title he won with Napoli as well. It was either 89 to 90 or 90 to 91. But what's interesting is that he's won, 2 titles, and and in the same years as he's got 2 World Cup finals as well. And I think 90 to 91, after 91, it then started to kind of go downhill. So 90 to 91, he was still at his best. He was still, doing it. I think they also won. I think 90 to 91 they won the UEFA Cup with Napoli. So it was then from 91 onwards it all kind of started to go pear shaped for him, which is then I think he got the move. He moved to Seville after I think he was banned for a while, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I think he was banned. Wasn't he banned for 18 months or something?
Well,
something crazy.
There was of course USA '94, which was the bottom.
That was later on, but I'm talking.
Oh, before that.
Yeah, from 1990, 91 to 92, I think there was some kind of a ban for drugs, and then he got this move to Seville, which didn't really work out very well. Didn't play that many games for them. Apparently, he was backwards and forwards between Spain and Italy. Up to no good, and that was really it for him, wasn't it? And then, obviously, like you say, he came back at the '94 World Cup, and then obviously was tested positive again. Was sent home in disgrace.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it all seemed to go wrong from kind of '91, onwards. But what's interesting is from the years of kind of 85 to kind of 91, those kind of 6 years or so with Napoli, he was obviously under the influence of it then, but he was still performing like, like a wonder kid. He was just, winning everything and, being, like you say, a demigod, but still under the influence of drugs. So what's interesting is what would he have been like without the drugs?
Yeah, and I mean, there's some cynics obviously that say, was he using drugs in the '86 World Cup? But it's like, I mean, let's suppose he was for a moment. Would that really have made him become, this phenomenal influence on that tournament? I mean, I hate to ignore it. I'd like to think that he wasn't at that point, but he was still. It doesn't matter.
No, I don't think so either. I think not for me, he wasn't. But
I think
we don't really know.
I think that more that football started to slip from his life, as it probably was coming to USA '94, when I believe he must have been 34, 35. That's the problem, isn't it? We've seen it so many times. Something like an obsessive character. Geniuses like this are always troubled because they are single-minded. They do everything with obsession, right? And so when he couldn't do what he was born to do, he turned to something that would probably take the pain away from not being able to do that. And in his case, obviously, it was the worst: cocaine, pills, everything. And it's probably what's cost him his life at such a young age. Though we have to say, not really surprising. And one of the sad reactions I've been getting today across the board is the lack of surprise at this. And you just look at players like him, you look at Gaza as well, and it's almost as if without the game they can't function like normal human beings, which also is a testament to how great they were at what they did. By the way, everybody, just in case if you're watching on Instagram, I recommend actually you switch over to Facebook Live, because you won't get to see this handsome Yorkshireman otherwise. What's the matter with you? So go now to facebook.com/Gadsby's England.
You should be my agent.
Well, as long as I get 50%. So that's what I'd recommend you do now. If you're watching there, go and join the Facebook bunch, for goodness sake. It's still better. It's just still better. I mean, they're all whatever, but it's still better. So we at the end of the day, Nick, we've lost. It's one of those moments in the history of football. It's hard to put the words into what has been lost today. We've lost arguably the greatest player of all time, or in my opinion, the second greatest player of all time. It's a gargantuan moment in the history of football, and it's just strange to think Maradona is dead, and I think the repercussions of this will be a long time. I can only imagine in Argentina I would imagine a state funeral is likely. I would imagine a lot of people obviously travelling there to pay their respects. But it's an enormous day in our sport, in what we cover as journalists. It's an enormous day, isn't it?
It is. It is enormous. But it's like what you said. It kind of, although we're kind of shocked, it wasn't really surprising
No.
because of obviously it's been going on for 25 years of his ill health, and he nearly it was nearly fatal a few years ago, and so it wasn't surprising at all. It's just obviously reality is hit, and the fact is everybody kind of knows the history of him, and how good he was. So yeah, it is. It's a massive input, and you've never. I mean, if you've been watching any of the news tonight and any of the the tributes and the football pundits and the players, I've never seen so many players talk about it. No other player, but it would have had that impact upon. I don't think. So yeah, it just shows you how big this really is in the football world.
Yeah, absolutely. He's it's just one of those, I think. Almost you remember where you were when you heard it, as you said. Even that wasn't surprising. It's still a shock. There's a difference between surprise and shock, isn't there?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's about it. I guess I'll ask you, Nick, for if I had to give you one abiding memory of Maradona, I guess it's got to be, well, the obvious question, is it the hand of God or the greatest goal ever scored, or is it something else?
I think it's a handball, really. I think it's a handball, unfortunately. The goal was great; it was magnificent, but I think it was a handball, wasn't it? It's never been. There's never been anything quite like it in football.
No, and because it traumatised us for the rest of our lives. That's what's the worst thing.
Well,
I still have nightmares about that game, even though I wasn't alive.
I think it killed us for 4 years until the next bit of torture came, which was going out on penalties against Germany in 1990. I think it was bad until then, for me anyway. I actually still think probably going out to Germany in 1990 was probably.
It was harder. It was harder because
it was harder.
It was. I mean, of course, there was that moment, of course, in '86 when Lineker. We thought it was in, didn't we? He just. I remember Barry Davies saying Lineker, and we all jumped up because it looked like it was in, and it wasn't. It just, it was just awful, And I think, England were a very, very good team then, and who knows, had we got back to 2-2, there's every chance we could have won that game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we probably would have got through that game. But who knows? I mean, it was just his World Cup. It was his moment, wasn't it? Like I say, he dragged them through the games. He got them through that game, which he shouldn't have really have done.
No.
Because apart from obviously that goal, we were in that game, and then obviously, the wonder goal, killed us. But yeah, it's probably it was probably the handball which I remember of him. Although I followed him, watching Napoli, a lot of his goals, and just amazing memories of watching him.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that unfortunately that will be the one which would kind of stay with me, is that the haunting of that handball.
And I don't think I ever told you this, but on my when I was growing up, I was so angry, and there was occasionally a couple of people would say, "I'm not sure if he touched it." I managed to get hold of this photograph from one of the great photojournalists of him literally ball touching hand, and I put it on my door of my bedroom, and I put it there for years. So anybody who came and said, "I'm not sure if it was his hand," I just dragged them by the scruff and said, "Look, it's hanging on my door. This little photo, probably about the size of a passport." It hang there. It was there for years until I left, and then Mum took it down. What are you gonna do? But you can go on the internet and see it. I would recommend everybody go, if they want to do one thing today, go and watch the highlights, or go and watch the whole match from '86. But watch, if you can, the BBC coverage of it, because the great Barry Davies did the commentary, who I regard as maybe the best television commentator, and the beauty of his commentary in that game, just less is more, and the description of the second goal is one of the great pieces of commentary. I think he says, he's got Barishaga to his left, Valdano to his right. He won't need any of them, and he just says. He says at the end, you have to say that's magnificent. Just a brilliant piece of iconic commentary. So I would really recommend if you want to review it. That's the obvious match everybody says, but Nick named a couple of great ones as well, the Belgian one and some of the club ones he said, and he took a little club called Napoli and put them on the map, the world famous. But look, hey Nick,
I just want to add one other thing. I was on TalkSport tonight, a Spurs fan. It was very interesting. I'd never heard this story before. A Spurs fan called in, and he said he was a season ticket holder for years at Tottenham, and he went to a game. I think it was Ozzy Ardiles' testimonial game, and he said that Maradona had played the night before in Oslo for Argentina against Norway. He played a full international. The next day, he flew in specially into London for Ozzy's testimonial, because obviously he was great friends with him. And still was. And he flew in for the game, and apparently he was the best player on the pitch that night.
Yeah.
And he was exhausted from the day before,
yeah.
And apparently unbelievable.
Yeah.
Nobody could get anywhere near him. And the Tottenham fan who had called in, said that he'd never seen a player. He said he'd never, even in a testimonial game, which was a meaningless game, he said he was just on another level. He was just on a different planet to any of them. And there was some great players playing that night. Players, people like Hoddle were playing that night. And, it just shows you how people have different memories and how people have seen him over the years in different games. So...
The irony of it, again, is he develops almost like mini love affairs with the English players who hated him so much, They became, and Lineker, of course, became quite close to him, and I think it goes on to a point you made, which people are complicated. He was a very complicated person, people of that are, but he had an incredibly kind and generous side as well. I think
he did. I don't think he was a bad guy. I think he was a good guy, misunderstood, but along with that fame and kind of demigod-like, comes all these issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not condoning or defending drugs or anything like that, but I think maybe those years in those mid-80s and when he was getting kicked to death,
yes,
in Napoli, maybe that was his sanctification of
pain.
Of dealing with it. Maybe
it's a great point.
Maybe dealing with the pain, that was his way of dealing with it. If you're getting kicked every day and having to go to training
mm-hmm.
and play two or three games a week, maybe that was his way of dealing with it. What do we know?
Yeah, it's absolutely, and we can't possibly imagine the pain he must have been in coming off the pitch, having also been the captain and dragging his team and putting up with that. It must have been excruciating.
And this documentary, what we were speaking about earlier on, the one from 2019, really does show in a lot of the games how he really was, really captures how he was
mm-hmm.
brutally hit and hacked
mm-hmm.
and what have you, fouled tremendously, which in today's game, you'd never get away with it.
And this is why he is greater than Messi or Ronaldo. Well, I'm sorry, that in itself. Yeah,
that's like I say, that's always the ongoing debate.
Yeah.
Like I say, it all comes down for me. The highest level is obviously international football, winning of World Cups and European Championships. You could argue that Ronaldo. I think we had this argument last year when I was kind of talking about Ronaldo. I'm not saying he was as good as Maradona, because I don't think he was. But we were talking about how Ronaldo has actually done it, at international level.
He hasn't.
Where he literally dragged kind of Portugal to winning a European Championship.
Well, although he didn't play in the final, I know
that's your argument.
Many people say that was a good thing, because it gave him a much easier strategy against France. Was just to backs up against the wall and frustrate France. And That's where I think the difference is. I don't think Ronaldo has the gravitas. He has that captain's, weight about him. But he still, with some decent players he's had next to him in Portugal. He still couldn't take them to that level where he could do something extraordinary, like the second goal against England. I don't think he was at that level, but I don't think there's
anybody in World Cup history who was single-handedly take the team, dragged them to a final and won it like Maradona did. I don't think anybody's done that. And we had this little chat before, didn't we? Just before we came on live, we were talking about Brazil and the teams of the 60s and the 70s and Pele, and obviously him winning World Cups. But he had unbelievable players around him.
Unbelievable players.
Argentina just didn't.
No.
Even in '78 when they won it, they didn't have.
No. They had some good players, but not. You're right. I mean, this is the argument. Pele had the Jairzinho and earlier than that, of course, he had the great. Oh goodness, the Garincha around before. I think 58. 62, and it is a good argument, and you can argue either way, and I urge anybody to look at the footage of Pele as well and decide for yourselves. But there is no question that for a single person to have an effect on a tournament from start to finish, like Maradona did in '86 against some brilliant opposition, is something that. I'm sorry, it just puts him a cut above, Messi, Ronaldo, etc., etc. I just don't think people can see how difficult that was and how he was able to respond to anything that was thrown at him that Messi and Ronaldo haven't been able to answer. The questions that were asked of Maradona, he answered them. The questions that have been asked of Ronaldo and Messi at the highest level, you haven't yet been able to do that, and it's probably too late. Never say never. It's probably too late now for either of them to do that at a World Cup, but who knows? Maybe they will. And if Messi imposes himself on the World Cup in Qatar, if he's there in some way, then I'll be the first to put my hands up and say so. But all right, my friend, we have run out of time that we should be, but brilliant. I mean, you obviously have so many memories of the guy, and there is that mixed feelings, but yeah, you can't help but feel a bit of sadness, and I think it's also feels that part of your own life has gone with him, because he was so much of our footballing lives growing up. He was a gargantuan presence. And remained so, and of course was manager of Argentina in 2006. So he never really, his shadow was all over, and was indeed until the day he died. But that is it. We hope you've enjoyed this tribute to Maradona, and Diego Armando Maradona today died at the age of 60. Quite a day in the history of football. Nick, thanks very much.
Thank you.
And we'll be back with a normal show when we don't have to always do this. Thanks very much for watching.